Hey folks, before we start, just want to say a really quick thank you to Squarespace, who are sponsoring this video. Hello, how are you? Now, the very keen-eyed among you will realise that, no, I am not Adam Cleary. Although, funny enough, I did have a very funny case of mistaken identity recently. Adam, sorry about the credit card bill. Through some careful negotiations on my part, and much more realistically, bribes, I have been allowed to present some of these wonderful lists on the secret of the ships. Thank you very much, as ever, to the amazing Paul Sutherland, who, like, where he gets these details, I don't really want to hazard a guess, because I have a feeling that some sort of crimes are being committed. And you know what, Paulie? I appreciate that. I appreciate the dedication to the craft. You have already seen lists on the Enterprises. You've seen lists on the Defiant, which will come up in this. You've seen lists on DS9. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through 10 secrets of the First Contact fleet.
Hello, I'm Sean Blass, formerly of the Federation News Network, and you may know me from Trek Culture's Ups and Downs. The Federation News Network has once again refused to publish the true story of the Great Koala of the Galaxy, what Section 31 is really up to, and what Voyager's real mission in the Delta Quadrant actually was. So I turned to Squarespace, whose beautiful and powerful online platform allowed me to set up Galaxy Truth Network. With your membership, you will have access to hundreds of gigabytes of koala photos, and also have access to our daily updated blog on which Starfleet Admiral is currently under control by parasitic bugs. You will also be able to see all of our social medias and tags, so you can join the community. Squarespace are giving a free trial and 10% off your first purchase if you go to www.squarespace.com/trekculture. Then you, like us, will be able to connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content. Manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights, all at one easy-to-use platform. That's www.squarespace.com/trekculture. For the true side of the news, don't you listen to those false prophets, and particularly don't listen to that Sylvia Rond. You, Sylvia Rond.
Number 10. Akira, Steamrunner, Norway, and Sabre. Oh my. Obviously, the main star of Star Trek First Contact is the beautiful Sovereign-class Enterprise E that was designed by John Eaves. If you've even walked near one of the lists about the ships before, you're gonna know who John Eaves is. Another name comes into the Star Trek pantheon in Star Trek First Contact, and that is Alex Yeager. He was the Industrial Light and Magic visual effects director on Star Trek First Contact, and we have him to thank for these new designs of ships that rock up in the Battle of Sector 001. Yeager was given a bit of a task, which is you have to introduce, along with the Sovereign class, which was being done, as I say, by Eaves, introduce these new designs of ship, and they have to be instantly distinguishable from the new vessel. He had a bit of a challenge ahead of him. He said the goal with all of those ships was to make them look completely different from the Enterprise, as we were introducing the E in that film, and they didn't want people going, wait, which one's the Enterprise? Therefore, the very radical layouts on those four ships, but still keeping true to the basics of starship design. You got to bear in mind, Alex Yeager was 22 at the time. At 22, I was still figuring out button-up flies on my jeans, and yet he rocks up with these four designs, and Rick Berman, Jonathan Frakes, and production designer Herman Zimmerman all go, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Boom. They make it in the film, and they have almost all of them turned up again later on in Star Trek. Number 9. Ready for her close-up. Probably the most popular of these new designs is the Akira-class USS Thunderchild. Now in the film, we don't know the name of the ship because it's actually not printed on the saucer section. The registry is NCC 63549. Now, during the production process, Yeager actually said that the Akira class quickly became not just a favorite, obviously, of fans after the film was released, but it was a favorite during the production process as well. The producers initially planned to have at least one ship that we could get closer to camera. That was the Akira, so it got the most attention to detail. So Yeager treated the Akira Akira class the same way you would any other hero ship. That means that you could get up close and personal with this ship. The way, think about the other films. You know, you get these beautiful pan shots of the Constitution class 1701, you get those pan shots when we're in space dock, and of course the Enterprise D in Generations as well, because that's where the bulk of the action is. Of course you're going to take more time. And that's how popular the Akira class was, is they gave it that level of attention in the film, even though it doesn't have an awful lot of screen time in the released movie. Now, the design was actually inspired by the USS Reliant, the Miranda class that of course had been introduced back in Wrath of Khan. Those had the nacelle swept underneath with a roll bar over the back, and both of those ideas were incorporated into the Akira class. Added to this was a veritable ton of firepower specifically designed to take on the Borg. According to Yeager, this was my gunship battlecruiser aircraft carrier. It had 15 torpedo launchers and 2 shuttle bays, one in the front with 3 doors and one in the back. I really got into it with that one. The whole idea was that the front bay would be the launching bay and that they could return and come in the back because they'd be protected by the rest of the ship. Number 8. Days of Thunderchild. If you're wondering where the name for the USS Thunderchild comes from that. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. It was based on the RMS Thunderchild that fatefully has an encounter with the Martians in this novel. Now, the class of ship, the Akira class, came from Yeager's own love of the 1988 Japanese anime film Akira. We've already gone into the amount of firepower that was packed into this ship in the previous entry, but Yeager had another task, which was where and when does the Akira class fit in to the rest of the Federation fleet? Now, according to Yeager, the Akira class, it has the same escape pods as the Enterprise E, the Sovereign class, but it actually has a more similar hull plating to the Enterprise D. Now, that was to suggest that it was commissioned after the Galaxy class entered service, but before the Sovereign class entered service. It becomes an immediate fan favorite, but it also becomes one of the producers' favorite, which almost led to the design being taken wholesale and used for the NX-01 in Enterprise. If you want that full story, go and check out our Secrets of the NX-01 list, our interview with Doug Drexler, and you'll get all the juicy details there. Number 7, background action. Now, while the Akira gets treated to the full and fancy hero ship treatment, the other ships do not get anywhere near as much love. Now, these include the Steamrunner class, which was originally called Streamrunner. Did not know that before I was recording this list. That was the USS Appalachia. Then there was the Norway class USS Budapest and the Sabre class USS Yeager. These were deliberately designed to be more angular and less detailed so that they could be there to kind of fill out the Federation fleet without having to necessarily get up close and front with the camera. That way, when the scenes were being rendered, these models were not given anywhere near the same level of detail as the other ships in that scene. While you would never be able to notice it in the actual film, like you'd want to zoom in times 1,000,000 or something like that, the actual paneling textures were borrowed. For example, the Sabre class, right, the paneling on that was borrowed from the digital model of the USS Enterprise D that had been used in Star Trek Generations. And the Norway class was given the texturing of the ILM version of the USS Defiant. Did somebody mention Defiant? Number 6, Defiance. Now, as you'll know, there's already a list and an article on the USS Defiant. I strongly advise you to go and check it out. This ship is just full of wee secrets. But its story could have ended with Star Trek First Contact. Now, while it's unbelievably cool seeing the Defiant on the big screen, yes, I still remember that. Yes, I'm probably older than a lot of people watching this video. It was, according to Ronald D. Moore, as one of the writers on the film, a necessary plot device to get Worf to the solar system to battle the Borg. So, I mean, it's fantastic. You see it's firing the pulse phasers and it's running alongside of the Borg. You know, unfortunately, once we see it, it's gone through a bit of an L challenge. This presented an issue when it came to behind the scenes. For example, when Ronald D. Moore sent the script to DS9 producer and eventual showrunner Ira Stephen Bear, heads were butted. Somehow we had implied that like the Defiant was destroyed or something. We didn't mean to destroy the Defiant, but Bear just ranted at me for destroying the Defiant, and it was really his only note on the whole script. So we went back and we were very careful that the Defiant actually did survive. Now, there is indeed a scene which shows Worf being, well, beamed off the Defiant, cameo by the lovely Adam Scott for all you Parks and Rec fans out there. Worf then insists on coming to the bridge of the Enterprise E and asks immediately about the Defiant. Picard says, adrift, but salvageable, and then we get our tough little ship joke. Absolutely love it. Do you know who didn't love it? Ira Stephen Bear. He was quoted as saying, I didn't see the point in bringing it on just to kick the crap out of it. Number 5, canon fodder. So we've addressed the new ships that appeared in Star Trek First Contact, but what was going on with the rest of the fleet? Because there's some very recognizable ships dotted out there as well. Now, of course, these include the Miranda class, the Oberth class, and the Nebula class. Star Trek First Contact was actually the last on-screen appearance of the filming models of the Miranda and Oberth class starships. These had both made their debut appearances in Star Trek 2 and 3 respectively, so they'd been around for a long time at this point. The recycled ships were fairly difficult to make out on screen, but dialogue does refer to the USS Bozeman. If you remember, Cause and Effect from the Next Generation's 5th season featured an augmented Miranda-class vessel, which was then called the Soyuz-class USS Bozeman under the command of Kelsey Grammer's Captain Morgan Bateson. Brannon Braga hails from Bozeman, Montana, so likely the inclusion was more just a cameo to where he's from. But it also then ties quite nicely into what the Bozeman was doing once it got to the 24th century. This will be expanded on in the novel Ship of the Line, which again featured Captain Bateson, and also in Decipher's Star Trek customizable card game, which is basically Star Trek's answer to Magic the Gathering in their First Contact expansion pack. Number 4, Technobabble. It was established that the full length of the Enterprise E was 2,248 feet. The diameter of the Borg cube was 9,000 feet, and the diameter of the Borg sphere was 1,500 feet. So they're established in size by the designers. The rest of the new ships in First Contact, however, literally had little blank spaces beside them for anyone to just come up with the actual size of these ships. However, as these vessels started to pop up in reference novels and encyclopedias, for example, Michael Indeniso Kuda's second edition Star Trek Encyclopedia, it was left to these kind of franchise heavyweights, the Okudas, Rick Sternbach, and Doug Drexler, to come up with a scaling system for these vessels. First up is the Akira class. Now, listed in DS9's technical manual in 1998, it stated that the Akira was a heavy cruiser class starship, that it was designed at the Antares Fleet Yards on Antares 4, was designed for a crew of 500, and measured 464.43 meters in length. According to the same resource, the Norway and Sabre class vessels were both listed as being created in space dock above Earth. The Sabre class could only carry 40 officers, while the Norway was listed as being able to carry 190. However, both vessels were listed as being 364.77 meters in length, which doesn't really make any sense if one of them can carry almost 4 times the amount of crew as the other. According to DS9's visual effects supervisor David Stipes, the Sabre was scaled down to about 190 meters in length, which makes it just longer than the USS Defiant. The Steamrunner class took the longest to get an actual size because it was in fact the Eaglemoss Starships collection that put 356 meters on the length of it. Basically, it was the bastard stepchild of the rest of the fleet. Which is a bit of a shame, really. I like the Steamrunner class. I seem to have been the only one. 356 meters in length. Number 3, a Star Wars story. Yep, I have just uttered the very heated words when it comes to the two franchises. Pfft, please, we're over that. You're probably all well aware at this stage that a very special ship makes a blink and you'll miss it cameo in the Battle of Sector 001. Yeah, the Millennium Falcon is actually present fighting the Borg cube. And no, I'm not just making that up. And no, that's not something that was digitally added years later. ILM's John Knoll had just come off working on the special edition trilogy of Star Wars in the 90s. And as a bit of a joke, added the Millennium Falcon into the Battle of Sector 001. So no, it's there. It is 100% in the film. Much like R2-D2 is in 2 of the J.J. Abrams Kelvin films. It's kind of like it or not, Star Wars is in Star Trek. Star Trek Online designer and YouTuber E.C. Henry actually took the time to design what the Millennium Falcon would look like if it was panelled with Starfleet livery. And actually, it looks really, really cool. Now, the link to that will be in the description of this video. It's pretty sweet, actually. Definitely different. Listen, otherwise you've got a Corellian freighter fighting the Borg. You know, you make up your mind. There were other ships shown to be fighting the Borg, but not in the actual film. The first theatrical trailer for Star Trek First Contact pictured USS Voyager. Obviously, that never made it into the final film, so I would imagine what that was is it was a placeholder. They needed to get the trailer out, the effects weren't ready on the film yet, so they stuck in what they had, which actually makes an awful lot of sense, really. So that's why we get, for, you know, at least in headcanon, maybe, Voyager fought the Borg cube as they left the Delta Quadrant and then arrived in the Alpha Quadrant. You heard it here first, folks. Number 2, fleeting appearances. After Star Trek First Contact wraps production, ILM gave the digital assets to Paramount Pictures for them to use for Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. You know, sounds great in theory. However, all of the technology that ILM was using was actually quite different to what Paramount Pictures were using, so the First Contact ships had to be rebuilt again basically from scratch. Bear in mind, the Akira class got the most love, so actually that one was easiest to slot back into Star Trek, which is why the Akira class is the one that probably makes the most appearances in Deep Space Nine, debuting in Call to Arms, along with the Saber and the Steamrunner class ships, but it also appears in Star Trek Voyager, most prominently in the episode Message in a Bottle. As I mentioned, the Steamrunner and Saber class ships also appeared in both DS9 and Voyager, but their appearances, they're much less frequent and they are much like further away from the screen because they're just not being rendered to the same quality. They were in the final shot of Star Trek Voyager as well, escorting that lovely Intrepid class ship back to Earth, and we were then robbed of a scene immediately afterwards and Voyager ended too early. I'm over it. I'm over it. There was, of course, a very missing ship in DS9 and Voyager. Number 1, Lost with All Hands. The Norway class made its only appearance in Star Trek First Contact. It never appeared in Star Trek Deep Space Nine or in Star Trek Voyager, and hasn't appeared after that in the franchise either. DS9's David Stives gave a very cryptic response. Basically, he just said, "I believe we didn't include the Norway class for technical reasons." That's it. So whether that means the CGI file itself was corrupted, or frankly, they just didn't bother, we never got it on screen. Almost 25 years later on, again, along comes Eaglemoss. Eaglemoss replicated all 4 of the ships, including the Norway class, for its ships collection. And, according to Ben Robinson on Twitter, this is what led directly to the Steamrunner class being included in Star Trek Picard's 2nd season. If that's the case, it might take a while, but hope is not lost that we may see the Norway class again in action. I've got my fingers crossed, and I bet some of you do as well. And again, thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to head to www.squarespace.com/trekculture for a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. Thank you so much for watching along with us. Thank you so much, as always, for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Make sure that you're following us over on Twitter at TrekCulture. You can find myself at Sean Ferrick and all the usuals as well. Whatever you do, until I see you again, look after yourself. Our friends in Ukraine, stay strong. Keep fighting. We are with you. Our friends in Iran, your bravery is inspiring. Thank you so much. Everyone, have a wonderful however long it is till I see you again. Live long and prosper. Make it so.